Hello, my name is Goran Mekic. I am going to talk about how to manage LDAP service in a FreeBSD jail with CBSD and Reggae and how to make it all easier. LDAP is somewhat, if I can call it cumbersome. It's not so easy to start, and to make it somewhat easier, there is there is this repository which puts LDAP into a context of mail server and Jabber, and so communication. As database, LDAP can be used for variety of services and scenarios, and you can imagine different use cases and schemas either in database or LDAP. So we're going to cover here one of them. We're going to see the principles, what LDAP provides that even with such a slow start, initial experience, we still kind of like it. It must provide something good. When after all this, I would say not good examples and use cases and tutorials around, I think it's LDAP can be appreciated more. Anyway, this is the repository which contains. Whoa, I didn't want this. For now, you can basically ignore everything except this. So you can see there's a lot going on when you have just mail and chat. You still need quite a lot of services. And to make it easier, you can start with this vars.mk. Contains an override for this file. So you can leave it like it is. Just in vars you can override what you need. And for this how to call it, this example that we are going to go through today, let's encrypt and LDAP are enough. We don't need anything more than that. And so you can override with vars.mk, and it's in git ignore, so it won't be remembered. And the only thing you really need is the domain that you own, but I'm gonna get back to that through LDAP and Let's Encrypt, so I'm not gonna go into that right now. So to shorten the time, I created Let's Encrypt and LDAP jails. They are VNet jails with real DHCP, we can see here there's CPCD starting, and they're going to bring their own services up, whatever they need. So actually, they will do it later. What I mean is there is no LDAP here running, and it's because I know this because the certificate is missing, but it's not so easy to figure it out because by default slapd is the service, the server LDAP, the LDAP service, and you can't really see what happens. So one of the most common things I've done is, how do I even get to an error? How do I even get to the log? And now, okay, I think you can see this more easily. Or all right, so this is how you manually start LDAP. You can put this D is debug level. I found 3 to be appropriate because when you run it, here, this pretty much explains it, but there's all kinds of things that it's spewing out. And you might want to reduce it, but read on what these debug level do. So this is really cool, right? This is short, and there is no certificate missing. There is, sorry, wrong line. This one tells you, okay, this file basically doesn't exist, and it doesn't. It's that's kind of okay at this point. So this is kind of important. To give it a deep debug level, user group LDAP, and you start this, because Reggae is going to configure it so that TLS and SSL are working. That means that we have, this is TLS, and this is the SSL version of the protocol. How do we handle that? So, how do we handle that? First, you can see this domain was copied here. So if you have your own domain, that's gonna be populated here. Otherwise, it's, I think, example.com. Yeah. So it's example.com, and it's not really, probably it's not a domain you want to use. But when we log into the Let's Encrypt, there is this special file for Let's Encrypt the domains. So you need to choose your basically DNS provider, your email, your token for that provider, and the list of domains that and subdomains that you want to register. And when you're using DNS-based Let's Encrypt, you can have a certificate with asterisk, right, for every subdomain. But it's not, if we say that there is a, and there is PKG tilde center, then this certificate will be valid, but not for some subdomain. Okay, so we are generating something for this subdomain and the domain here. And now I'm going to basically use another window to actually type in those credentials, because I want to show you how it looks like when you run your script, Let's Encrypt script for the first time. Give me just a sec to acquire the credentials. God damn it. All right. And I want this here. Right. And then there is this script that does the actual update or initial fetch of the Let's Encrypt certificate. That's how you configure it. The initial Let's Encrypt domains.txt is kind of a placeholder, so you know what you need to input for it to actually work. Right, this here, whatever is your token, email, and provider, you enter it here, and it's gonna take a while. So, all right, it's done. I'm gonna pretend that I have no idea where the certificates are, only that I know how they are shared, and they're shared through null mount. Now, if I type mount, this is all exhausting, but if I think it's called this, yeah. So I see that dehydrated certificates for Let's Encrypt jail are available in LDAP jail under LDAP Search certificates. I don't know how you read this. Anyway, this is where it is visible under the LDAP jail /etc/certificates, and this is where it originally comes from. This is the full path on the ZFS dataset, because if you look at it, let's encrypt, right? This is where the data for that jail is actually stored on ZFS, on let's call it a disk, right? So this is how LDAP knows how to pick certificates from Let's Encrypt. although they are two separate jails. There are probably more advanced or scalable ways of doing this, but for small setups, this is perfectly fine solution. And let's see what LDAP has to say now. It's let's restart slapd. It fails to start again. Huh, wonderful. No certificate for what? How come? So let's check. I know how to. All right. Ah, and this is probably one of the. Huh. Okay. I am guessing what is going on. Oh, this is empty. All right. All right. All right. All right. I forgot one of the let's call them steps. It's kind of security thing. Um, when you actually um, create these jails, what are you going to do first? Is you're going to make just the Let's Encrypt service. And because it is all done now, this is why it takes so short. And then you're going to add your credentials, and the keys are going to be in place. And then you're going to say, okay, create LDAP. And now I already done that, but I think I can provision again. And what is going on is that certificates are root-owned, and it doesn't even matter if they're owned by root or not. What matters is that they're not owned by a user and group that LDAP is started with. And you can't actually have a user that conforms to every single service and combination of UID and GID. So there is script that, let me see. No, it doesn't do that. There is a script that upgrades the certificates. Upgrades. I don't know how to call it, but it takes the certificates that are mounted as an LFS, and then creates this certificates under OpenLDAP with the proper user and group, and it starts slapd with it actually does this, right? So this is the proper output. And then we have this running, all right? And this is kind of magical. This is chosen so that the rest of the configuration and hooks around Reggae and CBSD and LDAP are such that, for example, multi-master is supported. You can I have it in mind It's just not supported out of the box. You need to tick more things in the configuration, but it's made easier to do that. It's there is already something that you can use, like an empty database. Actually, if I tell it like this, okay, it says no such object. Whatever you were searching for, there isn't none. And it's kind of okay because we didn't enter any data. But in this path, we have the whole configuration of the Open LDAP without online configuration. That's advanced topic. Multi-master is also advanced topic, but there is a config here generated that is sorry, not that. Multi-master is all commented out, but at least these paths, this configuration items are appropriate. They can be right. If you would have these in the in a DNS, this would work if you uncommented. And why would it work? Because it's included in the default configuration that comes with Reggae. One notable thing is that everything starts with DC LDAP and our root DN, I think designated name, distinguished name, sorry, is CN root DC LDAP. Right. And there is a very dumb password generated for us here. Also, if you look here, it's the same password. So when you change it, there are two places. If you're in multi-master mode, if you're not, just ignore the second one. It's totally cool. But if you change it in two places, then in both places it's the same. It's gonna work, and across the servers and so on. So yeah, one of the advantages of LDAP is that it can be made resilient, and it's made for frequent reads but not so frequent writes. And it kind of sounds like authentication backend, right? You're gonna log in more than you're going to change your password. So it's very common backend for authentication when it needs to be centralized and distributed yet centralized, right? Single source of truth, but that single source of truth is distributed. Now, let's do some basic things with LDAP. I'm gonna do some magic here. Okay, so I started rearranging and making my LDAP scheme and configuration simpler. I just didn't finish, so it's a little bit messy right now. So my LDAP examples are under mail, which is kind of weird. And I want want it under LDAP as examples. Now, what did I do here? Oh, right. Devil mode is included. I turn it on. So when I log into LDAP and go to user sources, there is examples that I just created. Okay? And these are not, they're not examples and they're not templates. They're neither. What I mean is that, for example, the top, you can just apply it to your, how to call it, database. Because ultimately, LDAP behaves as a database. It just has so much more in it that, too much for the introductory presentation. And how do you add stuff? You say, I will log in, and I will log in with this fellow, and what I want is you to read this file and load it into the LDAP. Now, top is just, I don't know how to call this, like nice initial setup. Because LDAP is like a tree, that's why this is called the top. I wanted to avoid the root because I wanted to call it something other than the root user and make a distinction. So this is the top of the tree. If we were talking only about the tree, that would be the root, but just I'm avoiding that for purposes of being very clear what I'm talking about. And when you apply the top and you, right. Okay, I'm gonna tell you what happened here. But when you apply the top, it's gonna ask you about the password, and the password is that secret, which is in right. So what this do is what it says is if you want to use non-SSL port, then you have to use TLS. You cannot go without encryption or without, encryption. And you just add capital Z and it should work. All right. Now, how do I know it works? How do I know this is actually added? There is LDAP Search. Okay, let's try what it does. No TLS. What it does now is you can see that this DC LDAP and DC account DC LDAP kind of resemble this, right? There is this resemblance, right? And this is how you actually search for stuff in your LDAP. Now, how does it know it should start with DC equals LDAP? Is because we told him so. Actually, Reggae told it for us by configuring this file and saying, okay, my base is here, my URI is here, and TLS is set up, of course. So when you say dash capital Z, it knows what to use because LDAP conf is for the client and /dconf is for the server. Okay, so we are basically going to check every now and then with LDAP Search what is in the database. And we can see that comments can be removed with a -L, capital L. And sometimes, I don't know, maybe you're scripting or so, you're going to want to reduce the amount of output to a degree. So this is how you remove the comments in this output. And you can say, okay, how about, I think this is, yeah. How about you show me just a distinguished name? This is what DN stands for. And distinguished name is, if you're coming from SQL world, you can, for now, you can safely assume it's an ID. There are differences, but you can safely assume that for before we come to the more exotic topics. Anyway, you don't have to display that. You can say, okay, how about you display O attribute? And DN is always displayed so that you know which which entity does this belong to, right? Otherwise, if you just get LDAP and O account, who knows? Maybe the list is big. So this is how you search, and a searching. This is how you reduce the output to a certain attribute of the LDAP entity. But DN is special because if you say DN, then it's going to be one-liner. Sometimes you want that, sometimes you want something else. And you can say, okay, how about you give me email? Doesn't exist. There's no such thing. And you can say, okay, give me everything, but give me those that, this is how you filter, give me those that are have their attribute called O of value account. Now, I expect only one, right? And this is a really small data set and a really small example how to reduce the amount of information that LDAP Search is spewing out, and how do you filter something. Of course, you can have Boolean logic here, and this can be infinitely complex filter when you're searching for something, but we're trying to make it that simple for the purpose of this tutorial. And okay, let's see what other stuff are in examples, because this is how you create or just initialize the LDAP, so to say. And there is a domain. We're going to ignore the list. It's something for the mailing lists, and it's not ready, but we're just gonna ignore this list.ldif, and we're gonna go through the rest of the files. This is a bit email centric. It started as an email schema, the thing I wrote, and wow, it was 15 years ago. You would say I'm an LDAP expert by now after 15 years of running it in different environments called productions. But actually, it's such a complex topic that you can see no matter how much you know, there's infinity of what you don't know yet. And when you look at this domain LDAP, in this examples directory, domain is kind of like variable. LDAP is not a template, but I wanted to denote somehow what you need to enter in order for this to work. And where editing is needed, there is this all capitalized, well, something. And you're probably going to say, okay, replace every instance of a string domain with a tilde center. Now here is one, and I could just type it in and it would probably be faster. But we're gonna get to the part where that is not faster. So we're going to enter one domain that we're going to, in the future, we are going to host it as an email service, mail domain. So super secret password, and we can see this is added. So when I search, okay, here it is, and we have a domain. And postfix that I like to use and Dovecot know how to go into this OU and recognize this as a domain. And postfix is going to say, okay, give me all this there. Give me all the domains. Is now a matter of filtering by organizational unit. And now you can see that we have, well, one, but if we entered more, there would be more services, domains, sorry, in this output. And this is, for example, how you can see, okay, which domains are in LDAP. And you can say, okay, give me just OU, and it has even less verbose output. And I mean, I'm not gonna go into scripting. How do you parse all this, and how do you figure out which line is which? I'm just going to show you the features and capabilities of LDAP itself. So, okay, we have a domain and we have one user, and now if oh my god, no, I don't want that. If I say replace domain now, it's gonna do it in a few places. And there is domain, there is user, there is first name, and my last name does not belong to the ASCII characters. Oh, sorry. I would write it like this, but this would create. No. No, please don't. Don't. Damn it. This is not what I wanted. Anyway, I would use it like this. and make it ASCII, because the output is otherwise encoded and not so easy to read. It's encoded in a very deterministic way. It's just not not user friendly at the beginning. So whatever you do, you try to keep your attributes of a user uh, using ASCII characters. Otherwise, it goes haywire. It doesn't, but it's much harder to read. So you can see, okay, my emails are going to be stored here under this nobody user, and object, the class of entity I'm adding, it's kind of no, not kind of, it is multiple inheritance in LDAP. Use these two classes to create this. So this attributes are not some random attributes. They come from these classes. They're defined there. But for now, this is how I enable an account for for mail and Jabber service, right? You can have multiple user classes, and actually, let me show you what happens when I add this. So I have this account here, and now I can say, okay, don't give me that one, give me a person. Now this is weird, because there is no object class person here. There are these two. But as I said, this is multiple inheritance, and it does work like, I don't know, C++ inheritance, Python, whatever you use for object-oriented programming. And the person is actually a base class. So that's why it works. Although there is no person here, these two inherit object class person. Now, how do I know that? I looked into the schema, the source of the schema for pilot person and POSIX account. It would be nicer if I knew this before, but yeah, sometimes you have to dig into the code and see how some attributes and classes are defined in order to do something more more appropriate for your script or your use case. So this is a trick, of course, and I learned over time. But let's try pilot person. It works, and I would expect POSIX account to work also. So just to be clear, I wanted to show that this entity is an actual object in object-oriented programming sense of the word. And there are classes and inheritance. And that's how the objects are constructed. So this is all fine, but where is the password, right? We never saw any password, and how anything works if there is no password. I mean, I said this is authentication backend, and you can have authentication without a password or token or whatever. Yeah, the LDAP has attributes and schemas that support different kind of authentication tokens, and password is just one of them. So it's really flexible for authorization and authentication purposes, right? It's just a kind of cumbersome. So before I deal with that, let me just go through how to read this distinguished name, because that's basically an ID. We have this user ID, but that's not ID in SQL in a database sense, right? You can have, now this sounds stupid, but you can have multiple user IDs in one object. Actually, every attribute can be repeated multiple times, but it probably doesn't make sense for most of them to repeat, except like these, which are like groups or tags. You're adding the user object into the group jabber and mail, or you can look at tagging the users with capabilities. So this one has a capability to log into email and Jabber, and distinguished name. If we imagine that we have something like this, actually, let me do it better. So if we have this distinguished name, I don't need this. That means that DC, this is read from right to left. So this is root, and this is subroot, and this is subroot, right? So if it's a tree, at the top, I'm going to have DC LDAP somewhere here. And then I'm going to have DC equals account, and there is this connection here, right? Maybe we're gonna take space, yeah. Here I could have, sorry, I could have something like DC equals lists or list, right? But this is how you read it. And now DC account has underneath DC equals, no, sorry, UI equals tilde center. And this should go right. And I should move this and this. All right. Now, somewhere here, there is UID equals. Right? So, the quickest as I can, this is how the tree looks like in the LDAP. So that's why we read it right to left, because it makes more sense to go from top to bottom in cases like this. And to be perfectly precise, we actually have this right now. All of these can branch. We just don't have branches right now. Okay, let's do it like this. We don't have branches right now because we don't have enough data. But this is how you. There is a person called Brad Victor, and he says that the problem and the solution must have immediate uh, graphical representation, at least in your mind, but ideally on the monitor, so that you can visualize the data you're working with. And if you're trying to visualize LDAP, this tree-like right to left tree is what I found most appropriate. Okay, so let's go back to LDAP service. So this is what we have. This is the account, and this is all we have in our LDAP. And if we're not filtering any info, we're going to get even metadata together with the output. So how do we change the password here? Is kind of similar. Actually, how do you add a user? Is this, and what actually happens is that I added this user. Now, this is not the right way to add a user, but I want to show you what actually happened, right? So using this user, root user in LDAP, I created this user for this domain, well, account, and it's from the file, right? And now, if I say, okay, how about you change the password for that user? This is the syntax, right? And first goes that secret password, and it's gonna output newly generated password for the user. How do we know that? We have no idea. I will get back to that in just a second because I want to show you something else. And that else is if you add capital S here, you're gonna be asked for the actually see. Does this make any difference? It doesn't. Okay, so wherever this capital S is, you're going to be asked about the password instead of being generated a new one. And you can say, okay, I'm gonna put the dumbest one, the same as UID, and that is Mecca. And then it's asking about this password. It's secret. And now, how do we know it's changed? No idea again. Why don't we know? How can we see that there is a password at all? Well, this is what is going on, and why we don't see it is because we're not logged in. This is what an anonymous user of LDAP Search can see inside the LDAP. Now, LDAP security is really the LDAP configuration security-wise is really expressive because you can say who can see which attributes, change them, and so on. But we're too wide open right now to make it easier to do some stuff. But what if it's the same option and you no, sorry, no, what I right? And now there's a user password or hash of it. This is kind of you can see that all attributes have a colon. It's just double colon here, and you know by double colon that this is a hashed uh, value, and you need to unhash it, and in a similar way, just not same hashing, of course. Uh, this if I wrote my last name or well surname uh, with UTF, it would also be hashed and in similar output. So that's why I said we're going to use ASCII only for now. And if I change password one more time, actually if root does it for me, you can see I entered the same password and I didn't get the same hash, right? And every time you generate your password, your hash is going to be different. It's going to change. And now, what is interesting is that I don't have to use this one, this user. How about I use this one? And now I'm just gonna type a dummy password and it's not right. So this is how the invalid password output looks like. But if I do the right one, Mecha for Mecha, I can see it. Okay? Now, this is kind of strange because why would users see a password? And what I'm trying to show you is that if you create another user and I don't know, call it like this. CCC. All right. You add another user. Okay, so you can see that if you're logged in as this user, you can see your user password, but otherwise you can't. Unless unless your root okay, I didn't change the password. I need it for CCC and it's going to be CCC. Right? So now when let's test my hypothesis. Root can see it, but this one shouldn't. All right? So when I'm using cn root, it's special. It sees everyone's password and it can do, well, everything. It's root. But my account can see only my user password, and that's by default in LDAP. Let me okay. So this is how one of the access how to call this access rules looks like, and you can see that user password is very special, right? Anonymous has to log in order to have a user password visible, And by myself, I can do basically what I want, right? Because if you can write, you can read. And this is what this says here. I can write so I can read also. I mean, this actually says read write by the user who is logged in for his own password. And everyone have whatever their account is, they can write to it. All the users can read and all anonymous users can read. Now, this probably is what you don't want in production. You're probably going to need authentication in order to put it in production. But again, we are working with a playground, not a production right now. All right. So this is how access rules in LDAP look like. I hope I gave you enough of an overview how LDAP works. I scratched the surface and oh yeah, I forgot quite a few things. So if you want to start with LDAP in the same way I did here, using CBSD and Reggae, yet you don't have FreeBSD on your own machine, there is this, and you're using Vagrant, then there is this nifty little repository. Give me just a sec. All right. So this is the command that will get you inside some directory, empty one. It's going to create Vagrant box that has CBSD and Reggae initialized and updated so that you don't have to do whatever. You can just download the comms repository, which I will give you in a sec. And you can play with it in a Vagrant, whatever operating system you have. The comms is coming from yeah, no it doesn't. It's coming from here, and if you go there, there is also a list of DNS records that you're gonna need in order for mail, Jabber, and IRC bouncer to work, and it's quite a list. It's mail and Jabber, I think, are the most complex, well, one of the very complex services from the perspective of DNS. So I'm kind of trying to make it easier as much as I can to have different services and all authenticated to LDAP. This is where this repository comes from. So you can also play with that in your either Vagrant machine or whatever FreeBSD machine. And this is where this lecture is how to say, picking up. It's taking this repository and building upon it. Now, if you look at the LDAP and enabled provisioners, you will see that it's Ansible. You may or may not like that, but that's what LDAP comes with. And what I expect from LDAP administrator is to get to know the LDAP, how uh, search, add, remove works, but then you will probably use some easier tool to manage your LDAP. I just want you to know how it all works under the hood, because this is most often this is the uh, security part of your service, because it's in most cases it's going to be used for authentication. And I really want to know, me personally, I want to know what's under the hood when security is concerned. I don't want any black boxes, and I kind of guess that you would like that too. What I'm trying to say is that we need to understand how LDAP works, because LDAP is going to be the base for all your LDAP management. But you will probably use some, I don't know, LDAP solution or whatever later on to do actual LDAP management. And I even have a friend who likes using a battery plugin for Eclipse to manage his LDAP. He says it's irreplaceable. Uh, so it's not all going to be this verbose, right? When you look at this one, this is a lot of stuff. But you saw at the beginning there is like this Tilda center was here and here and here was a capitalized domain. So it's kind of a template form, and probably in a tool you're using, you're going to add just those fields, populate those fields, and the rest is going to be pre-populated for you. Uh, that would be all. I know it's much to grasp. Uh, it's a really, really versatile, flexible tool, OpenLDAP. And as every versatile and flexible tool, it takes time to grasp the principles and start using it in a more advanced use cases. Um, Multi-master just being one of them, multiple instances, scalability, security, and it's all there, and we're gonna get there. Just be patient. Um, Thank you for watching, and I would like to mention few Patreon pages. Uh, I think I didn't spell this right. Let me just check. Yeah, I didn't. Clone OS on Patreon is umbrella for CBSD projects. Clone OS is a web service which manages CBSD, strictly CBSD. The hackerspace called Tilda Center is dedicated to learning, and all our lectures are and always will be free. We are slowly working on English ones starting last year, so there are some that are in English. and we are growing more and more over time. And with that in mind, you probably want to see what are we doing and what are the technologies that we like, that we use, um, that we like to teach using these technologies and so on. Hopefully, it will be useful to a wide audience, and if it is, great. If you have any troubles with understanding what we said, please leave us a feedback. We are not professional teachers and we need feedback how to improve. So please leave us a feedback if you know how to improve what we do. Uh, Thank you again. That would be all, and until next week. Hopefully the LDAP is less of a